Itasca, Illinois was founded in 1843 by Dr. Elijah J. Smith, who was looking for land to farm and an area where he could practice medicine. Most of the early residents were farmers of German descent. In 1873, the railroad came to Itasca, which led to a changing economy and increased population, and the village later became incorporated on January 31, 1890. By 1940, the population census was 787 residents. In December of 1941, with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the United States entered World War II against the Axis of Japan, Germany, and Italy. Many residents felt that Germany was wrong about breaking its non-aggression treaties and that Adolf Hitler was a menace who should be stopped, and also that Japan had awoken a sleeping giant by attacking Pearl Harbor. 121 men from Itasca served in the armed forces between 1941 and 1945. Of those, 2 men died in service to their country, W. Shankle and John Thomas. Today, Itasca, which is located 8 miles from O'Hare Airport, has a population of over 8,800 and values its history. In the year 2000, 18 Itasca servicemen were interviewed about their service in World War II. This is their story.
When I joined the Army, even before the turn of the century, it was the fulfillment of all my boyish hopes and dreams. The world has turned over many times since I took the oath on the plain at West Point, and the hopes and dreams have long since vanished. But I still remember the refrain of one of the most popular barrack ballads of that day, which proclaimed most proudly that old soldiers never die. They just fade away.
I was listening to the Bears football game when they interrupted the broadcast and announced that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. That was my first real concern about the war.
I entered in October of '42. At that time, if you volunteered, you could pick your branch of service. Brought the paper home at supper that night. I put it on my dad's dinner plate. And he sat down there and he looked at this. Looked back at me. This what you want? I said, yeah, Dad, that's what I want. I said, okay. He signed it.
I left too for the service, and we left from Chicago. I enlisted, like I say, and then we left by the Santa Fe train. Had a whole load of us there, and I won't forget this one fella. He brought a guitar with him. And for 3 days or 4 days on that train going to the West Coast, because all he would play is that guitar and sing There's Gold in Them Dar Hills. Then at the top of it all, we get in the middle of the desert. The train broke down.
I don't know that we thought a lot about the military, even in high school. When I was, we would read about these things. It seemed so far away in those days. I think the last thing we ever thought about was the fact that we would be going to Germany or China or Japan or any of these countries.
In our first mission, you didn't know what to expect. You're looking for fighters and you're just so nervous and tense. And then all of a sudden we're going on the bomb run, and all of a sudden shells are bursting all over you, and you're cringing, and you're saying your Hail Marys and Our Fathers, because this is it.
About how many ships were in the water then? Do you have any idea?
Oh, hundreds of them.
Hundreds?
I mean hundreds of them. Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you could have walked ashore.
Mm-hmm.
They had to throw so many ships and so many men there because they figured so many are going to die, you see.
Yes.
That's how they worked it.
Before the ships actually hit the beaches, They had paratroopers and gliders going in and back of the enemy lines, and their deal was to take out the guns that were setting up on top of those high hills up there. Also to stop reinforcements from coming through to help them. They had a terrible toll of glider pilots and troopers.
I went to visit my buddy up on the gun tub before I went on my watch. And I was there 5 minutes and I heard a big boom, the whole ship just shook, And I thought a boiler blew up. And then the captain started hollering, abandon ship, and we were, I said, what? He said, we just got torpedoed.
And there's 3 planes come over the hills. One went for our ship, one went for another ship, and one went in a drink. He missed the ship. I got out of there and I didn't think anything of it. I felt I was kind of wet on my seat. And here I've got shrapnel all over my back. In fact, I have shrapnel on my spine yet that they wouldn't take out.
Well, there was an awful lot of firing there too. The Japanese planes are coming over, and they sunk some of our ships. And one of the biggest ships that they did sink was a ship loaded down with beer. It just docked there, and the Japanese came in and they sunk the ship. And all these bottles of beer were floating around. The guys are going crazy trying to get the beer before it all disappeared. I said the only thing, they said they could have anything else, but they had a pick on that one. They announced it over our PA system that they dropped the bomb there and the war was, they surrendered. But then they made an announcement that the reason why he dropped the bomb is because that's the only way we can save a lot more American lives. Because if we were to set foot to make landings and invasions in Japan, there would have been a lot of lives lost. We were on board that ship when VE Day happened. We didn't go running around drinking martinis or anything like that. We're glad for it. Kept the boat going toward America.
They sounded general quarters, and right after they sounded general quarters, they announced on the loudspeaker system that Pearl Harbor had been attacked, and this is no drill. And they start telling us on how many battle wagons went down, how many lives they estimated were lost.
I got this phone call, and I picked up the phone, and it was my cousin Jessie, and I said, "What are you calling for? You just left here." She said, "Well, have you heard the news?" And I said, "What?" She said, "The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor." And I said, "Where's Pearl Harbor?" The next day, we recorded President Roosevelt's speech saying that the United States has been attacked by the Empire of Japan. And somewhere I've still got that record.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
And I can remember I was out on a date on the afternoon that Japan attacked us at Pearl Harbor. It was on a Sunday afternoon. And my uncle was the sheriff in this small town, neighboring town, not in Savannah. And he looked me up. He knew I was up there, and he ran me down to tell me that Japan had attacked us at Pearl Harbor. And so we immediately went to his home and listened to it on the radio. I guess that's the first that you finally realized that the world wasn't as small as, or as large as we thought it was.
Do you remember anything about boot camp? What?
Oh, yes.
You know, you never
forget boot camp.
Get up, out on the grinder at 5 o'clock in the morning and do your calisthenics out there, and then have breakfast, and then you have your schooling during the day, and then in the evening you had your time to yourself.
Funny thing happened. I went down to the Marine Corps to enlist. I had something wrong with my heart. It was a murmur. They said, we don't want you. So I said, well, I went back home again. I talked to a druggist, which I knew, and he said, I'll give you a pill in the morning. He said, you take this before you go back down there, and the murmur would be gone. So I took the pill, went down there, and at first you had to go through the Army physical, and then the Navy, and the Marine Corps was last because they were the best.
So in 1944, I got a letter to go down and report for 1A. So they asked me the question, how old are you? I said, I'm going to be 26 in July. They all laughed. They said, well, you know what Franklin Roosevelt says, anybody under 26 has to go into service. So I was drafted in April of 1944.
4 days exams I think we had, just to figure out what they're going to do with you. And everybody, I was hoping, boy, I hope to make pilot training, because I said, right, I want it. And by golly, got on the bulletin board, there I was, a pilot. Oh yeah, that was my dream. They did ask me one time, and they said, well, how do you feel about, we send you over to Germany, bombing over there, so you got a lot of relatives there. If they send me, I'll go, I'll do my duty.
Well, I was physically fit, and I always admired the Marines and so forth, and it's the best outfit there is. Tell any Marine that, once a Marine, always a Marine.
They were taking us as fast as we were available. The thing that we don't realize in this country when you're over here as a civilian is that there are casualties all the time overseas, and so they must constantly have replacements. That wasn't played up in the media so much because they were always thinking about the morale of the civilian people back home.
We were in San Juan, Puerto Rico, when the war broke out. Captain got on the intercom. He says, attention all hands, this is the captain. We're now at war. Pearl Harbor's got bombed. We're going to go into Norfolk, get shipped for action. Well, we got all shipped, Well, we done all right. We handled it all right.
This is my radio man talking now. This mission is one I don't care to think about, but it's an important part of my story. Our target was the German aerodrome at Udine in northern Italy. About an hour before the target time, we were attacked by approximately 150 enemy fighters, both single and twin engine, and a terrific battle began, one that I shall never forget. They used everything they had, machine guns, 20mm cannons, rockets, and bombs, which they dropped through our formation. One of their 20mm shells passed through our number 3 nacelle and exploded just outside the ship. Soon the bombardier, Lieutenant Matthews, began calling for the engineer, that's myself, and asking for oxygen. For the enemy fighters were forgotten. My only thought was to help Haney. For he loved Haney as all of us did.
And a lot of fellas told me that, they couldn't, unless they had a few drinks, they didn't have the nerve to go into battle. There are terrible stories of the way people died. One friend of mine told me that he never felt like he could make friends in the service. I said, why not? He said, because it's too hard to lose them.
One day I was sitting in the enlisted man section of the 50-footer. Could start watering. He says, you don't know, do you? And I says, no. He says, the whole crew was killed 2 days after we left.
The Japanese did kamikaze, and this was always your worry. We see our sister ship got hit in the bridge, and it just
demolishes everything, you know. Everyone is the same, you know. You feel the anxiety. But then again, it more or less becomes part of you, you know.
Couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
Bad, really bad.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Could you hear all the guns and everything?
24 hours, you
Yeah.
hear guns firing.
Mm-hmm.
Bombs dropping, gunfire. That was terrible there. That's why I said the men on the beach, them are the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
That's the guys they should always, like you're doing to me.
Mm-hmm.
They were all right.
And then how did you know when you could get up and move?
Well, when the firing stopped or we move ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You never know where they were. They were tied up, and some of them were in palm trees and coconut trees, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful. I lost a lot of good friends.
So we landed on Utah Beach, and it was early August. And we immediately set up operation and started operating the French Railroad. We were not that far from the front at the time. The front was somewhere around in the Paris area, and we handled supplies from the ports where they would come in on the ships and be loaded into freight cars. And you never got off the train until somebody relieved you. You didn't know where you were going, for one.
Well, you know, you're all excited. This is all new. What's going to happen? I forget where the first mission was, but it was some island that they wanted to knock out the runways or something. That's where we first met the Japanese fighters, and they used to come and dive right through your formation to try and split you up, break you up, and then you'd be easy to shoot down. But when we were in close together, all the firepower and all the planes, it was pretty hard for them to get too close. So they would try different tactics to try and split us up.
The plane came in, must have had 15 Japanese on it. These men took off, and their bodies were all wired TNT. And each man ran for a plane on the airstrip and blew it up, and blew himself up with it. But that's what they were taught to do, to die for the Emperor. And if that's the way they want to go, I suppose. If it makes them happy that way, let them have their way. I'll live my way.
Invariably, there's humor, even in the serious situations like that. You still have humor. This young fella, he was up on the same platform as the director, but when the mine went off, he ducked down. You know, the only thing here. His buttocks is standing out, and he shrapnel hit him right above the tailbone. That was the fun part, because now everybody would come down and hit his sack.
Oh,
hi. All top.
All top.
All top. That's what color is it today?
Oh, I bet that hurt.
Yeah. So even in serious situations, you have humor.
We had to retrieve mines, live ammunition, even dove for a lost set of teeth. Because first they had dropped 5 cases of whiskey overboard, and we were brought there to bring the whiskey up. So. Amazingly, we found 2 cases, but we didn't find the rest of them. And 3 days later, we were called back to go and see if we could find his captain's teeth. And one diver goes down and comes up with the teeth right away. And the captain is there, and he's saying, "How could you miss 2 cases of whiskey but yet find my teeth?" You know, we just look at it and we wouldn't say nothing. But then when they pulled out, that's when we go back and get the whiskey. And of course, we distributed it amongst the whole submarine bunch there.
And we hijacked the beer truck from the Army once because the Marines didn't get assigned any, so they was wondering where it happened to their truck. Well, we repainted it. Our unit had a truck finally. We had some beer finally.
All right.
But when we got up to Guadalcanal, there was the malaria mosquito. And we all had to take Atabrine once a day to ward off the effects of well, if you had malaria, what it would do. It was a yellow pill, and we all kind of turned yellow in our skin.
Aboard ship, the guys were too lazy to wash their clothes, so we used to take a long rope and tie our clothes on a rope and throw it off the tail of the ship, and we drag it behind. And a few times, some fish got at them too, and they got a hold of the clothes, got rid of the clothes, and you had to have some of that. You couldn't have strictly being on edge all the time. So.
Then on August the 6th, we got the word on Armed Forces Radio that the United States had dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. We didn't know what an atomic bomb was, but I remember the announcer saying it harnesses the energy of the sun, and that made a little more sense to me.
I was on the island of Luzon, because if we'd had to go to Japan, a lot of us would have got killed, because they were dug in all over there. I didn't see anything what happened there at all, but I know of that Iwo Jima and them places that was really bad. And in Hiroshima, in Japan, that was all leveled, so there must have been a lot of deaths there.
And I was at Guam, and this is where I think the greatest president we had was Truman. And anybody that talks about it doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, because I was sitting on Guam waiting for the invasion of Japan. And when he talked about dropping the A-bomb, we all cheered after it was dropped. We didn't know what it was, what it could do. And like I said, we were at Guam waiting to go there for the invasion. We were told what our orders were and what we were going to have to do.
Hats off to Harry Truman for using that bomb. They hold it against him, but if he hadn't done it, because our whole unit was scheduled to go up on the invasion of Honshu Island, the main island of Japan, and that would have been a very costly affair.
After that, after they secured the island, we start getting our issue of winter clothes. We said our next move is going to be Japan, which is only 300 miles from Okinawa. And then I believe on August 7th, they dropped the first bomb on Hiroshima. And then on the 14th, they gave them a chance to surrender. They wouldn't do it. Then they done it again on the 14th, Nagasaki, I believe. And the second one is, all those people, all those civilians wiped out, which wasn't their doings again. But the way I looked at it was either us or them. They figured if we hit Japan, hit the main island, we'd lose 1 million men, because there's just no way you could take that big island. So thank God for the atom bomb, which a lot of people didn't think was right. But if you were in service at the time, you saw the other side of the fence too.
I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan. In the reply, there is no qualification. Arrangements are now being made for the formal signing of the surrender terms at the earliest possible moment.
We set our ship on course from an island, Okinawa, they called it by name. The battles fought so fiercely, the war we endured, was no game, okay? It was the end of 1945, and the killing and the destruction had just ceased, but there was still fear and resentment, and our vigil had not ceased. And it was a season of Christmas, and all of the things that we did hear. But out at sea and hear a song was strange for us to view, but white Christmas it was, and when it finished and just got through, because we were thinking. Sea calmed down to stillness, and the ship became so calm and quiet, for surely someone so powerful had just put everything back to right.
Very little is solved through war. We lose more than we gain. And I'm not saying we don't have to go to war.
Yeah.
Don't misunderstand my statement. But it isn't something that anyone looks forward to. I think you feel an obligation. And I think we all felt that. Certainly never had any second thoughts about volunteering or whether we belong there or not. I think people know the circumstances far better than we know what causes the decision to be made to go or not to go.
Well, I think it's a positive I like because it taught me a lot about life, personally speaking, how to go out, how to be out on your own and survive by yourself and depend on close friends for a relationship. And you need something like that, and it lets you know a little more of what you're fighting for. I mean, it wasn't our fault the war started, and though I looked at it, we had to help stop this war. It was one of the greatest wars they ever had. It was supposed to be a war to end wars, but it wasn't. But I think I learned a lot of knowledge by it.
Still have my uniform, which I can't fit into. I only wound up as a corporal, and which was high enough, for what I had to do. I was proud to have served my country, and the service is something that we all had to go into, and I wonder sometimes if we shouldn't still require some kind of training for the country, which we don't anymore. But
I met my dad on the sidewalk of Parkside Avenue in Chicago, and he grabbed me and felt all my bones to see if I was complete. It was quite an occasion.
Our crew was happy that the war was over, and it gave us a chance to celebrate. It became official then, of course, and the crew chief came out and notified us that the war was over. In a matter of a month or so after the war ended there, we boarded the Queen Elizabeth and headed back towards the States. And I think it was aboard the Queen Elizabeth then that I got the word that the war in the Pacific had ended. I was a little distressed, of course, because of the wars, and glad when they ended. It didn't change my life too much other than the 3 years that I spent in service.
No, it was a good experience, and like I say, you join Navy, see the world, and that's exactly what I did. And you don't know how well off you are in the United States until you go to a different country, see how people live out there, and you don't know how they can live out there. Just thankful to live in the United States.